Hey, history buffs. So this module we're talking about the Roman Republic, which is my specialty. So watch out, it's about to get really detailed. I really dislike John Green's take on the Roman Republic, so I'm ignoring it entirely. So buckle in, this is going to be a bit longer than you're used to. Rome's Republic started in 509 BC, and it has basically two separate parts. You have the Senate on one side and the people on the other. And as a matter of fact, Rome actually referred to itself in all public documents as the Senate and the people of Rome. That's basically the official name of the city. Who were the Senate? Who were the people? Well, the people were all citizens of Rome. And as Rome expanded, they actually gave citizenship to the people they conquered. So the people half of Rome actually changes a lot over time. They had two different ways to divide the people of Rome. First, the people were split up into 35 tribes, as they called them. 4 of them were just for the city of Rome, and then 31 of them were the country tribes or the rural tribes. So it was based on geography. And there was a certain council called the Tribal Council or the Comitia Tributa, the Tribal Assembly, that would vote on legislation, whether to go to war, and a few other issues. Basically, people voted by tribe. So there were only 35 votes, and they would be counted based on how each tribe decided. So that's one way the people were split up. The other way is by centuries. And the highest class actually had subclasses too. So the wealthiest Romans actually had a much greater vote because the century assembly had fewer people the wealthier you had. So each century voted individually, and there were 193 centuries. 70 of those centuries were for just the wealthiest Romans. You can see that they had a huge impact on the voting when the centuries voted. And the centuries voted on magistrates, the rulers of Rome. Rome was ruled by magistrates, particularly the consuls, the praetors, quaestors, aediles, on and on. These people were elected by the Centuriate Assembly for 1-year terms. So just to focus on the consuls were elected every year for 1 year. There were 2 of them. The idea was that they would kind of check their partner in office to ensure that one person can't have total control. And they were military leaders as well as civilian leaders. And that's true for all of Rome's magistrates. Rome didn't have a division between the military and the civilian aspects of its government. Instead, they expected their military commanders to rule the city as civilians as well. The centuries elected the consuls, and the consuls controlled the military, but they did so on the advice of the Senate, and this is where the Senate comes in. The Senate is not at all like our Senate. If you're thinking of a legislative branch that's elected, think again. Roman Senate is totally different. Forget everything you think you know about the Senate. The Roman Senate was made up of former magistrates and other people who were appointed by an office called the censor. Censors were elected once every 5 years. There were 2 censors, and the censors chose who got to be in the Senate. Their criteria were, first, have they held a magistracy? Second, are they morally upright? And third, do they fit the property qualifications to be in the Senate? So every 5 years, these 2 guys would go through the Senate roll and the census of Rome itself and pick who deserved to be in the Senate. The Senate did not choose policy. The Senate had the authority essentially to guide the magistrates and to propose things for the people to vote on. Because remember, the people made the decisions. The people chose the magistrates, and the people legislated in Rome. The Senate, however, was always there, and they had what was called Auctoritas. And this is where Roman politics gets interesting. Auctoritas was this idea that when a Roman does something for the community, they gain Auctoritas. A way to think of Auctoritas is to just think of sway. Auctoritas is your sway over the public. And you gain it by gaining public favor. And you gain public favor by holding office. And you use public favor to hold better offices. You can also gain public favor by giving the people things like hosting dramas, giving them food, giving them money, building public works for the people, and these were all important aspects of a Roman political career. But by far the easiest way to gain Auctoritas was to hold office and succeed in your office. So this meant that you had successful military campaigns as a consul, or you were a great judge as a praetor, or you gave great addresses before the public as a public servant. This allowed you to basically use your Auctoritas to fulfill your political goal. What does the ideal Roman politician look like? This is where the Roman Republic becomes very intriguing, because the ideal Roman politician is so blue-blooded they might as well be a Smurf. And Roman politics was actually not all that democratic. Roman politics was controlled again by the Senate that was closed by 2 magistrates, and these magistrates were always from powerful families. And the Senate, therefore, was always from powerful families too. And Roman politics was full of an entrenched upper class that basically had full run of the place. So the ideal Roman politician was from a wealthy family who had already held office. His father probably held office before he did. He was able to use his family's reputation to gain notoriety among the people. He could basically say, hey, I'm so-and-so's son, so-and-so is a really great guy, and the people basically use that relationship to gain his trust. And then once he uses that relationship, he holds office. And when he holds office, he does things for the people. He either gives them money, provides a service to the public like leading the military or handling the treasury or the grain dole. And through doing that, he gains the trust and the gratitude of the people. And then he will make note of the gratitude that they owe him when he runs for the higher office. So the ideal politician is a career politician, constantly parlaying political office into greater accomplishments. And then once he gets to the top, he wants to use the consulship to gain a cushy military command and a governance that will give him a lot of money. And man, do the Romans leech the provinces. Once they control a large swath of the Mediterranean, the elite of Rome view the provinces as a way for them to gain back all that money they spent gaining gratitude from the people. And this has a huge effect on the way the Roman Empire will work, but we'll talk about that a little bit more in the next module. What are the people doing in all this? Well, the people, like I said, get to choose who is in control. But the Senate, because it's full of these former magistrates, has all the Auctoritas. And when the Senate can say that they all agree on a decree when they take a vote on something, it's really difficult for the people to go against that, because the people respect the Senate and they acknowledge that the people in the Senate are capable leaders because the people voted for them, didn't they? So this is where the Senate gets its real power, is from Auctoritas. They don't actually have the ability to legislate. They don't actually have any rights or powers. What they have is Auctoritas. They have sway. So when the Senate asks the people or the magistrates to do something, the people or the magistrates almost always say yes. And it's an odd event when they don't. But, as we'll see in the next module, that happens more and more throughout history, to the Roman Republic's great detriment. So, as you're reading Polybius and Cato, I want you to think about this idea of Roman politics as I've described to you, as you're reading through them, and I'll see you in discussion.